Orange County punk rock scene, if you're familiar with the bands that we're going to be talking about. So if there's a question at all, ever, just raise your hand and go, wait, what happened? What did Social Distortion do? Blah, blah, blah. And we might be able to answer that. Nate and Daniel wrote a great book. I've just been reading it all week long. Nate, you're a writer. Where do you come from?
That's a good question. Where do I come from?
How old are you?
How old am I?
Yeah.
I'm ripe old 39, so...
I asked that because this scene that you guys start off with happened when I'm 61, it happened when I was 14 and 15 years old.
Yeah, I was a little young. Maybe not born, but...
You're -9.
Yeah. But, you know, I am from Fullerton. I grew up and was born and raised in Orange County, and for me, yeah, there we go. Bionic Records, I see you. You know, grew up going to Bionic, you know, went to just as many punk shows as I could growing up, and skateboarded, and to me, that was the soundtrack of my whole growing up. And so, whether in Orange County, yeah, so that's where I'm from, and that's why we're here with this.
And you've
book.
written for the LA Times.
And, you know, LA Times, yeah, got my homie here, Vanessa, LA Times person. So yeah, I'm a deputy editor of the LA Times Entertainment section. Before that, I was a music editor for OC Weekly for about 7 or 8 years. And like I said, grew up in the scene and wound up being able to interview a lot of these great bands while I was coming up and learning how to be a journalist.
Great answer. Daniel Kohn.
I am not from Orange County. I'm actually from New York. My introduction to this music was through something that's now an artifact from the past called MTV. So I got my first initiation to this was seeing the Story of My Life video with Mike Ness was the first person I'd seen with more than one tattoo that was visible. And it was exciting and cool and a little dangerous and like, you know, swung and was an outlier in everything that I liked, which coincidentally came from this city. So it would serve as kind of a yang to that yin. And then every year I'd go to summer camp, and then the summer of '94 was when I came home and my friends were skateboarding, listening to Offspring. So it's like, oh, I guess this is what we're doing now, is listening to this. And I never looked back. I started listening to Sublime after that. Later on, no doubt, but really got into the 3 formative bands of this book. And I am 44, so I'm a little bit older. The events of the beginning of this book took place while I was a toddler, infant. And I've written for Times as well. I've written for Rolling Stone, Vice, Spin. What else? That's it. And this wonderful book. So, which again, this was a labor of love, and it took us a long time to do. So, hope you guys enjoy this tonight.
Writing a book is a hell of a thing. I know about that, and getting to the end, from the start line to the finish line is a massive thing. You guys did a wonderful job on this. The reason I asked these guys how old they are, right? Because they wrote this book about this. It starts in this scene that happened that I got to witness, and there's a few of us here that got to see this. We were in Seattle, American punk rock. I mean, we had the Clash and the Pistols and the Damned and 999 and go on down the line, the Jam, and in America we had the Ramones, Thunders, you know, we had DOA, they're from Canada, but they were like as big as Kiss to us. There was the Lewd, Avengers had put out a single, but there's really not, you heard about X kind of like, you know, a little bit, right? But we did, you know, so when this Rodney on the Rock record hit us all here in this town, 1980. It was all of these California fucking bands, and every song on the record was great. We're like, holy shit! We all had bands here. Like, there's a scene in America, you know. I don't think Maximum Rock and Roll had started quite yet. Maybe Flipside was just beginning. I'm not sure. I don't know. But when we heard the Adolescents. If you guys know this their first record and know about the Blue record, they call it Amoebas on it, but this guitar sound and this drum sound, it influenced everything me to this day. It influenced us all. You could hear that guitar sound in punk rock to this day, and many things beyond punk rock. But we had it in Social Distortion with Mama's Little Monster in 1945. Fuck, Agent Orange to us, like when everything turns gray, right? I mean, there was also like Black Flag and the Germs, but this is Orange County, so we're not going to go there, right? The Vandals. I want to be cowboy. But all this shit was percolating, and it made our scene seem more important. And when there's a tour that happened with Social Distortion and Youth Brigade, sorry, that came through town, and it was called, what was that? What's it called? Youth? No. What is it? That's the name of the documentary, but what was the name of that tour? Better Youth something. Yeah. But it came through town, and we knew Social Distortion. They had a bus. We're like, whoa, a bus, and a guy with a camera. I'm like, this is big time, you know. In the book, you read about it. It's just like fucking torture. The bus kept breaking down.
Poverty on wheels, yeah.
But to us then, like Social Distortion was cool with us because there was a Johnny Thunder sort of connection and a connection to Adolescents and the Orange County shit. So that's, at some point in my experience, and it kind of hits it in this book. I don't want to talk too much. Should I shut up at this point?
Keep rolling.
Yeah. It talks about it a bunch in this book, and if you grew up when I did, or if you're a historian about punk rock, American punk rock especially, what kind of happened to us, unfortunately, was like the kind of big guys from out in the suburbs we used to get our asses kicked for looking punk rock. For real, like walking down the street and a car would pull over, a bunch of jocks or frat boys or something, chase you down. And you learn to fight and all this stuff, but you got beat up for being punk rock. And that was the deal. And suddenly the guys who were beating us up came in to shake their heads. They put on Nazi, shit or whatever they did, and they came in and they started beating shit out of the punk shows. They thought that's what we were doing by slam dancing and pogo and stuff. So the scene turned very dark, and it goes into it in this book. And I kind of exited stage left to LA in '84 because the punk scene was just too violent for many of us. It wasn't what it was originally meant to be, which is like for the outliers, for the weirdos, and for everybody. And any kind of music's fine, bring it in. If your intent is honest and good, you're welcome. You're welcome. Wear whatever the fuck you want, And we got you back, and it just turned. That kind of all went away. So that's when Social Distortion kind of dropped out for a bit, and Mike started painting houses and got sober, and everybody was rethinking how to do punk rock. T.S.O.L turned into another version of T.S.O.L with Joe Wood, and they were more like rock and roll. Everybody kind of found a way around it. And there was bands like The Offspring that were percolating up, like in '87, really late, and playing punk rock, There was no place to play it. Like, punk rock's over,
Yeah, they had to go up to San Francisco, Gilman Street,
Berkeley,
Berkeley, and all that. And, to your point, though, talking about the evolution of things, around '84 and stuff, that's basically the theme that guides this book is how things change every couple of years. And we really have to look at sort of Orange County as the backdrop of that, because it is the Orange County punk scene we're talking about, but all the other influences that came to bear within that space that people think is this big amorphous thing, but Orange County really is, 34 different cities and different regions, different areas, different sounds. And so we talk about the Fullerton sound, which you mentioned, with the Adolescents. I mean, I come from Fullerton, and it was like, it was just something that, where's Fender guitar from? Fullerton, Leo Fender, and so it's not really surprising when we go into this history with where we're talking about why so many great musicians come out of this relatively kind of obscure suburban area. It's just that there's a lot to be unearthed with the culture there. And so that's how a lot of people know about Orange County today, is because of the bands on the cover of this book. I mean, how many people here know who Social Distortion is? Okay, so
The Offspring,
Sublime,
No
Doubt, and Sublime in Long Beach, but they had Orange County roots too. Brad Knoll was born and married in Orange County, so, and a lot of their development came through there. So for us, it was just about growing up with this music, loving it, going to the extent of becoming like music nerd, music journalist, like going and interviewing these bands and getting their stories and stuff. A lot of them, we're just so psyched that people wanted, people like younger, like us, wanted to come and like talk to them about the past, because it never really left. Just like here, there's just a rich history. You go to a city that has like a great music history, people hold on to that stuff and they share it with their kids, and that's what this book is sort of meant to do. Kind of like how we all got into music. It's just like, oh, I kind of know this music, and then let me turn the pages on this thing and like let me see who's in here. It's like, oh, a bunch of shit I don't know, and then you keep going down the rabbit hole, and that's how we all wind up in record stores for the rest of our lives.
And it's there's different eras to this too. I mean, you have the first 5 years, I'd say, from like 77, 78 to 83, which essentially ends when, not to spoil it, but I guess it's history at this point, when the rhythm section of Social Distortion quits in the middle of a show on New Year's Eve because they're so angry about Mike being so strung out. To the next era, which is Mike.
You're saying that was the end of that?
That was
that was the one gig.
The Mommies. That was the end of '83. So they were playing. They were the same group as Another State of Mind.
Yeah.
But that was it. That was the end. And then Mike's, when he was painting houses, is he started getting into American roots music. He started listening to Hank Williams, because that's what they'd be playing on the radio while he was painting, and they'd be playing Johnny Cash. And he reconnected with that music, and as the Blasters and X were coming up, from LA with kind of their version of that, Mike incorporated the countryside to his sound. And through their manager, Jim Guillermo, he always told them, you have to be a little bit different. That you can't just be a hardcore band or you're gonna be, done. And as Mike told us, it was, Live Fast, Die Young, to like, by the time Prison Bound came around, which came out early '88, it's like, living is pretty hardcore too. So you hear the evolution of that sound into more of a swingy country sound, which you hear on their big hits like Story of My Life and Ball and Chain. But at the same time that's happening, you have the Vandals, who, more or less, invented like comedic pop punk. Without the Vandals, there's not really a Blink-182 with the comedy side of it. So there's all these different scenes happening within these 34 cities that are completely different from one another. That's what makes the scene what it is, just so eclectic and incredible.
And it's the suburbs. It's the sound of the suburbs, this book, is what we're talking about. And there are way more suburbs, than cities, and people can kind of understand that. Every great band most of them that of actually came from a suburb somewhere before they got popular in whatever city they got popular in. And so that's, to me, like the through line in this book, and what will allow someone from, another city and a completely different place to resonate with it, is that you can see how the correlations are in your scene, in your city, wherever you're from. And I mean, it just so happens to be that, these bands, like I said, a lot of them sold a few records, and it was just like a thing that we talk about. We go through, sort of like you said, the punk beginnings into sort of like the point where it died out. We were talking about '84. We were talking about where, bands like the Adolescents and T.S.O.L, they started dressing different. It was more about metal, and the scene just kind of like died out for a bit there. I mean, there were definitely some periods leading up to that when we talk about, in LA, like the Olympic Auditorium. I don't know if anyone went to any of those shows, but...
You guys familiar with this stuff, the Olympic Auditorium gigs? Anybody?
It's like the gladiator ring of punk,
Yes.
Completely crazy. And we talk about Gary Tovar in this book. How many of you heard of Golden Voice? Okay, Coachella.
Golden Voice started in Orange County.
But Golden Voice started, with Gary Tovar in Huntington Beach and Highland Park. He went back and forth, but essentially Huntington Beach. And we, talked to him about his story, which is in here, which is totally crazy, which is...
He was one of the first promoters to bring British bands of new wave era, British punk bands, to California.
And funded the whole thing with drug money.
Yeah,
You know?
that
A rich tradition. But essentially, without him taking the risks that he did and getting, locked away, prison, and everything like that, without him taking those risks, without various people like that taking risks, you don't get the scene that you get out of this long history. And it always takes, that one person. Like we start the book talking about the Cuckoo's Nest, which was like the main, like kind of the lightning rod in Orange County where punk rock really kind of like took shape. And that was Jerry Roach. That was the owner of that bar, which, he started trying to just make a regular bar. Bands like just cover bands and rock and roll bands of the day would just play, and people would hopefully get drunk and hook up and
Come back for more.
But that business model was failing. So,
but what was lucky for him is that he was literally shared a parking lot with a country western bar. So as he started booking the bands, like punk bands like T.S.O.L. and Adolescents, and this was the only place these kids, they were 16 to 20 at the time. Yeah. And this was the only place they could play. And it just so happened that they had to share a parking lot with old country folks. And every night was an adventure there.
I mean, it was just, basically you had, what we're talking about in this book is, the outliers of a place that had to fight for their space to be heard and to be seen, and got their asses kicked for it, got persecuted for it, and still came back for more and didn't quit. And I think that's really what the punk spirit is all about. And you see that throughout history, but you don't really get there without some of these bands that lay the groundwork. And so that's why we did this. And then throughout the book, you kind of have some missing links that are maybe the world doesn't know, but in order for all of these bands on the cover to exist, you had to have that evolution of, trying something new, adding something different to your sound. And so that's, we talk about the Cadillac Tramps in there, which is a big band, kind of a transitional period band that had one of the greatest frontmen ever to exist, which was Mike Gabby DeBorno, and he was just a beast. And they had some really amazing stage presence. I mean, enough for the great Pearl Jam to want to take them on the road with them. And we talk about that story. But it is essentially one of those things where they just happened a little too early. It didn't quite have everything together to make that leap into superstardom, but every band on this cover opened for them, So for the Cadillac Tramps, yeah. So it's you see these dynamics in history play out, but punk rock was the catalyst, and so that's why you keep seeing it today, because it's a music of evolution.
Punk rock's the catalyst for life, man.
It is. And you can
I'll
speak
drink
to
to that after
also,
this.
but you could also speak to, you saw T.S.O.L. change in real time.
I did.
And they were buds of you guys.
They were. They are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know, to make this somewhat, it was a golden age for music that didn't end. It had a bumpy spot, from 84 to 89, let's say. It kind of went away but came back. And punk rock thing is punk rock, and these bands in this Orange County book is just truthful fucking music told by kids people that are living it, men and women that are living it, yeah, boys and girls that are living it. And it was honest, and kids like us up here would go, yeah, that's fucking real. And if it wasn't real, then I guess it really wasn't punk rock. You could really tell the difference. And so, I don't know if there's a real definition for punk rock, but that's the closest I can give. I guess we should see if anybody's got any questions that need to be asked of these two gentlemen who just.
Any questions from you guys about bands in Orange County or the scene or punk rock in general?
So what was your inspiration to write this book, since it's a little before your time?
Well, Nate and I wrote for OC Weekly, what would you say, 2012 as a pairing. He was my editor from 2012 to about early 2019. And the weekly, like all weeklies, it feels like in this country, are going away. And so that was part of it. Once we kind of saw the writing on the wall there, and then after that, a great LA Times journalist, Mike Kohn, died around that time too, and he was the man. Like him and this other journalist, Randy Lewis, covered OC Punk basically from its origins through its heyday and whatnot, and there was no book about it yet. So Nate and I were working together at Mallet, and we were bored one day, and we went on Google and said, has anyone written a punk rock book about Orange County? And we were like, yeah, let's just look at it tomorrow. Turns out we both got to work, like, nope, no one has done this. And it's like, well, why not us? This was around this time, 2019. It's like, well, why not us? And we started stealing Wi-Fi from our work and working on this book proposal. And then we figured, why not us? And then we go with some of the artists, and they were instant yeses, which are, happiness, surprise, and horror at the same time, knowing that we actually had to do this thing. And just felt like we had to do this now because there's a bunch of people in this book who are gone. And we interviewed them. It was their last interview, or it was hard to track them down now. And then some people who we didn't get to who are gone. And so the time was urgent in getting something out that could accurately depict the scene before it was too late.
I mean, that's my inspiration, like what you just said. Basically, like guys like Steve Soto, who I got to actually ride in a car with and go to the Black Hole, which is talked about in the Adolescents T.S.O.L. I got to go see where this club.
Do you guys know the song "Kids in the Black Hole"? Yes.
Yeah. And in Fullerton, across the street from Ladera Vista Junior High, which is all the more reason why it's so fucked up that they were doing so much crazy shit in this little apartment. So apartment number 2 on the first floor of this little apartment complex, which people still go and harass and bother because it's the Black Hole. It was.
Does an old lady live there now?
Yeah, she's probably not super happy. But that's my inspiration, is those memories with those people, like actually getting to know them, giving me history lessons on stuff that I couldn't read in books. And now there's a book, That's the point, is that we have to be able to preserve this history, because we, just like with punk, I think never really existed in the thought that it would ever be anything beyond what it was at that moment. It's the immediacy. It's just that right here, right now. I don't want to wait to get good to play guitar. I want to play guitar right fucking now. You know what I mean? I don't want to wait to have some booker book me on a show. I want to play a show right fucking now. And so because of that, nobody really thought about what it was going to be like 30 years from now. That there's museums dedicated to this stuff, but there's no book really to talk about Orange County. There are a lot of books to talk about other scenes, which are great, which, some of the books I read to inspire me to even just get the energy to be like, God, I'm gonna write a book. Like, holy crap, I'm gonna write a book. It's a fucking book, you know what I mean? But to me, it was like, the importance of it, going back to the why, when I'm getting up at whatever time I'm getting up to write that page a day, was those guys and those women, like Linda from the Doll Hut, in Anaheim, which was a great music venue that opened its arms to anyone, and it's just so important, guys. It's so important, and so to me, it's just, I can't think about it without thinking about the debt that I owe to these people and my career. And so it's just, that's what this is. Because every suburb in America has some version of this. And to us, this was something that gave us the spirit to be able to say, hey, fuck it, I don't want to wait for a book for Orange County to punk. I want to do a book right now. And so I think what I hope about the sort of the inspiration for this is that someone else will pick up the torch in their scene and be like, hey, I want to write a book about, you know, Kansas City punk or whatever, you know, I don't care. Whatever it is. So, sorry to go on, but that was a great question. Yeah.
What's the story that got left out?
There's some good ones.
I mean, you don't have to say who said it, but
I mean, a lot of the good ones are in there. We found the way. But the one we were talking about before, it's kind of the origins of Rage Against the Machine. You could trace it to Orange County. We didn't really delve deep into it. We spoke with Tim from Rage about it, but he was very poo-pooing his punkness. It's more so to the fact that, like, well, I lived in Huntington Beach and I was more into like Duran Duran. It's like I didn't listen to really punk, but then he'd drop a nugget like, look, when Zach and I were in 6th grade, I learned how to play guitar and Zach learned how to sing because we liked the Sex Pistols. That's something that I wish we could have included because, I mean, imagine a 11 or 12-year-old Zach De La Rocha and Tim Comerford sitting on a bed together, strumming Anarchy in the UK. But there's a whole book to be written about OC hardcore. But so just, you know, navigating that just a little, we wanted to give that the depth it needed, but without getting too far down a wormhole. You know, because this is called, you know, tearing down the orange curtain, how punk rock brought Orange County to the world. We wanted to keep to how punk rock brought Orange County to the world, and not, you know, your friend who lives 6 blocks away played 3 garage shows. We had to keep it to the stuff that was relevant.
And to that point though, like I don't want to downplay some of the bands that maybe like didn't get a full chapter or like a lot of pages in this book. Maybe they got a mention. Maybe we heard stories about them that were great. It just, like Dan said, one of the hardest things about doing this book this way was that we had essentially like 20 plus years that we had to try to figure out how we were going to do this in like a streamlined sort of way. And following our thesis, which is how punk rock brought Orange County to the world, it's that evolutionary piece, but I definitely think that there are bands in that mix that were super important that do deserve a book, you know, and do deserve a lot, you know, more than maybe we gave them in this one. But I would say that a lot of those bands who we may have like skimped on, like I know they would understand, if that's a way to like phrase it.
And some were just happy to be included.
Yeah, just to be included in it, you know. I think, you know, Channel 3 is like one of my favorite bands from Cerritos. Cerritos is not technically Orange County, you know what I mean? Even though it's like, they were in the scene, and Mike McGrath, true to the point that I made earlier, wrote an awesome book called Miles Per Gallon, which was all about him riding in the van with his guys on their first major tour, and like all the crazy crap that happened to them. And so to me, it's just like, yeah, I wish we could have done a whole thing on Channel 3, but if we follow that logic, there would always be a thing. There's always like, oh, we should write about this person. Oh, you should talk to this person. And like, we would never be done, is essentially the thing. And we had a deadline, and we're journalists, and so it's like, we only operate on like deadline pressure. And so that's what we needed to kind of think about when we were doing this book, was like, there's got to be a stopping point somewhere.
And it still took 6 years from the day we were like, oh, we should steal the company's Wi-Fi to it actually being released.
I mean, COVID helped with that. Essentially, like what Dan was saying, when we wrote the proposal, we were like ready to go, ready to sell it, and then it was like, you know, February of 2020, and it was like, will we still even like be alive tomorrow? I don't know if we really like can focus on a book right now. This is like kind of like an inspiration-driven thing. Like, we don't even know what the fuck's going on. So we kind of shelved it for a bit, and that we didn't stop working on it, but we just didn't move as quickly as we did once we picked things back up, once the world kind of opened back up a little bit. So that was sort of a thing where partially why it took so long. But again, we could have taken twice as long on this, and there would still be stuff that was not left in there, and someone would, in the comments, would still be like, why did you talk about Bone Crusher in 1991? You know, it's like, because write your own.
And it didn't bring punk rock to the world.
Well, yeah, I mean, it brought punk rock
Or Orange County.
to a group of people in the locality where
Right.
I'm from who still love it, but and to the point of like why it's important for my area specifically is like it's like you're still surrounded by it because of how important it was, and a lot of these bands are still around, they're still performing. You can bump into them at the supermarket, you know. It's like a strange thing in that. Versus like, you know, sort of a big city where when it comes to it, you know, in the suburbs, like when you're born there and your family's there and everything you know is kind of there, like you can travel the world. Like, I mean, Steve Soto and all these guys, like they travel the world, but their house, their home,
It's like
their people
here. It's like how you
is
all run into
here,
your
yeah.
musicians here. It's like they don't leave. This is home, and for these guys, Orange County is home, and their lives aren't changing because you know they're playing sold out arenas or stadiums worldwide. That's where they live, and that's it.
Right. Do we have any other questions? I'm sorry, we just ran over.
So how much did the rest of the LA punk scene like kind of direct your book? Like you talk, I heard you mention No Doubt, like Fishbone and No Doubt, they're so close, right?
Yeah.
The Descendants, Circle Jerks, and all the other bands, and maybe you're not from Orange County. When you're talking to these people and you're writing this book, how much of that kind of
Overlap?
overlaps, and did you talk about that in the book?
Yes, the No Doubt Fishbone is a great example because we spoke with Angelo about it, and we spoke with Norwood about No Doubt also, and because ska punk is pretty much the last quarter of this book is that and the influence of it, and without the No Doubt guys especially talk about how important it was to go to Fender's Ballroom in Long Beach and play with Fishbone and how they hung out with Fishbone. So there was a lot of crossover in that regard. We didn't really tackle the South Bay stuff so much because the South Bay, that would have been an entirely different beast. And there's a great book on SST that really covers a lot of that stuff. So we're trying to keep it as much as we could to Orange County line, but there is the crossover is there. There's a lot of LA stuff. Like even Sublime talks about being annoyed driving from Long Beach to LA and how they prefer to be in Huntington Beach, and Social Distortion stuff. A lot of it in the early days took place at the Hong Kong Cafe, which is LA. And there's a story about the Detours, a band I'd be really impressed if one person knew who they were here. You do? They're one person, great. So yeah, they'd go up to the Mask. It would be Rick Agnew and Gordon Cox, and they would bring what they brought back with them, and that's mentioned in here because as much as there were competing scenes to some degree, or at least a one-sided version of that, there was the cross-pollination of that because Henry Rollins' first show with Black Flag was at the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. And you know, to the point about LA, it was eventually became a cross-pollination thing, but it was also kind of like LA kind of rejecting what was coming from Orange County in the beginning because it was like,
they thought it was like a
yeah,
Big brother, little brother thing
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
well, also just like, who are all these like jocks who were like captains of the football team last week? Now they're shaving their heads and coming up here and beating the crap out of LA punks who just want to like pogo. I mean, slam dancing. We get into the history, kind of like, you know, a history. There's probably 20 histories of slam dancing, but like ours particularly kind of starts with the crowd in the Cuckoo's Nest and all of that, and basically just that venue was sort of like the petri dish where the OC version of like what became slam dancing kind of took shape, and it was far more violent, far more aggressive. It did not start that way, but it kind of morphed into that, and so we talk about that, and then you transport that up to LA where it's like they were still pogoing, jumping up and down, you know, just like not really bothering anyone, you know, and then, you know, arms start swinging and legs and, you know, elbow against back of neck, you know, these type of things are what changed the dynamics of the pit. It turned it into like just a sea of like crashing sharks basically, and that's not what everyone signed up for when you go to a show. And so, yeah, like, there was a lot of, you know, pissed off energy towards Orange County that we kind of get into in the book. And I think a lot of that was not unjustified, but I think, you know, you look at a band like the Adolescents, and particularly like, you know, Tony, the singer, and Steve Soto. It's like, those are two of the most peaceful. I mean, Tony's a maniac on stage, or was, or still is. He always will be. But those are two guys, when you sit down and talk to them, there's no way, like, he was about 4'2". He was like so small.
About 82 pounds.
And he was like a weakling. He was like the smallest guy. There's no way that guy's in there like thrashing around trying to throw his weight around, you know? Steve Soto, one of the biggest guys in the room, was also one of the nicest guys in punk rock. So it's like you can't paint Orange County, just like you can't paint any place all one way. And so that's where we talk about sort of the history of it, try to break it down from multiple perspectives, because there is that perspective, there is that, you know, T.S.O.L, shit kicker, like, we're criminals, we're coming to fuck you up, but also, you know, we play really good music, and Jack was the first one to throw a dress on and dare anyone to come fight him, you know? And so, like, there's that aspect of it, but then there's also the artistic aspect of, like, the Rick Agnews of the world, you know? That guy was he still is, a musical genius, you know? So that's where I feel like the LA lens on Orange County is not correct all the way. And so that's why this is a big part of why this book exists too, is to give the other side of things and hopefully lead to more understanding of what is special about OC.
Maybe you guys can help me with a really blurry memory.
Try.
I'm 55, I'm from Portland, Oregon, and around 88 or 89, fake ID, it's the Chiricahua, T.S.O.L. played, right? And we kept saying, play Code Blue, right? Play Code, and they're like, no, we don't play that song anymore. And me and my girlfriends kept saying, play Code Blue, good. And they got so pissed at us, right? We just don't fucking play that song anymore. Was it a completely different band than they used to be? They hated us.
I was just about to say which version of T.S.O.L was it at
I don't
that
know.
point?
We didn't know
Because there was two. Because there was the
What year?
remake.
What year?
This was like
89.
88, 89.
Oh, that was Joe Wood then. That was the other version of TSOL. Sorry.
Yeah.
There was another version of TSOL.
So we're little drunk girls with fake
Yeah,
ID.
yeah.
There's no internet. We know TSOL's
Sure.
playing. We don't know there's a band change. We want to hear Code Blue.
We
He slept
took
with my friend. He was that pissed, right?
Guns N' Roses, we took TSOL on the road. We had the Southwest tour booked, which was like San Francisco.
What year?
87, 88.
Yeah.
So we, like you said, no internet or anything.
We didn't know.
So we're like, fuck, TSOL wants to do this rap, you know, with us. Okay, cool. We were a new band. And another TSOL shows up. We still had Ron and Mike and Mitch playing drums, but they had a whole new frontman, different sound. I think they did play Code Blue though.
They wouldn't.
They
wouldn't
wouldn't, yeah,
play
maybe by
it,
89.
yeah.
They hated you for saying that.
No, we're like, I want to put the heads. They're like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So there was a different version. It's probably that version.
89? I don't.
Yeah, no, that's totally, that's totally it. And
It was a cool version of TSOL as well, but they should
It was.
call it something else.
They
that's
were TSOL.
that was definitely a line in the book where, you know, Jack was just like, we should have just changed the fucking name.
Yeah, we were very confused drunk girls.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
like,
We were confused too. when we showed up.
our boys.
Oh.
We were so confused. Okay, that helps this memory a lot. They hated us, man, because we just kept yelling.
Now you know why.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Who, yeah, of course,
It's a
it's
Chiricahua.
Yeah.
Who was the hardest person to get to agree to be interviewed, and who do you wish, because you mentioned a lot of people in the scene we've lost, who do you wish you had gotten before they passed away?
Hardest to get.
Hardest to get? Well, the good thing is there was only like 3 people we didn't get that we wanted to get. But the hardest to get was probably No Doubt guys.
Yeah, No Doubt took a little while. We did not get Gwen for this book, which
Well, the Gwen we wanted to speak with, I don't think is.
that Gwen is no longer in existence.
Yeah.
So, but I will say that, yeah, even just because those guys, part of it is, you know, when we did this book, when we started it, it was 2019, like when we were talking about it, we didn't think No Doubt was ever going to get back together. Adrian Young directly told us that there's no way they were ever going to come back.
And he said we could quote him in the book.
He said, you can quote me on that. And then literally like, what was it, like months
It
later?
was probably 5 or 6 months later.
Like No Doubt reunites, you know? And so, you know, I mean, to an extent, all the bands on the cover of this book, I mean, Bradley, obviously, we wish we could have gotten, but, you know, Brad Knoll from Sublime. But, you know, when we started this book, we could have never really imagined what 2024 was going to look like, which involved a festival called No Values that basically had
Do you guys know what No Values was?
It was yeah. I mean, it's big enough of a thing. I think people up here do, but it's like basically.
Some don't. So it was basically a history, like a Golden Voice put on festival where they celebrated the history of all the punk bands that came up in its scene from the 80s on, and 85% of these bands were there.
Yeah. Social Distortion headlined it. You had Sublime come back. I mean, Jacob Knoll, Brad Knoll's son, now stepped into the lead singer role, and they played.
The T.S.O.L, you know.
T.S.O.L. The old
My
school
friend
T.S.O.L.
knows, not me.
The Aquabats were there.
The Aquabats, the Vandals, Shattered Faith. So many of the bands, Agent Orange. Yeah, you know, just basically everyone, most of the people from this book. And, you know, that happened. No Doubt reunited. Sublime, you know, re-energized and reunited. You know, it was just basically like a whole, Social D, you know, Mike Ness beat throat cancer and came back out on the road and toured. Like, you know, Offspring had their 30th anniversary of Smash. You know, they had their whole tour. So this is all happening the same year as we were like finishing the book. And that's, we kind of talk about that in there, about sort of like the serendipity of it all, but also just how it was kind of destined to be that way, in that this music comes back around. I mean, we're in here combing through records of bands, a lot of them haven't been around for decades, right? But the music, we still listen to it, we wear the shirts, you know, we go talk about it with our friends, we argue over it, you know, have straight up fights over it if you're in my group of friends, you know, your text chains bedlam anytime someone tries to make a list of like, you know, the best songs of whatever band you love, you know, it's just, and so that part made it kind of fate in a way, but again, we were in it so deep that we were just only looking at the book page by page, trying to get it done, not thinking about the history that was kind of going on around us, which was kind of, in a way, similar to what punk was in general, because they were, you know, the bands, everyone in the scene was just looking at the now, not 30 years from now. And so we wound up coming face to face with this history as we were writing the stuff from the past. It was like, no, it's here right now, and this is why it exists. This is why it will probably always exist. You know, it'll be, you know, cockroaches and Mommy's Little Monster and whatever else. But that's why this music, like the echoes keep going, is because it's about that youth rebellion, and you know, hopefully that continues.
It might be in the book. We just got these yesterday, but
You didn't read it cover to cover already while we were sitting here?
was there a studio or a producer that was championing and encouraging these bands? Similar to in Seattle here, I mean, up pre-86, I'm not really, well, you did have to, I mean, like, who recorded the 10-minute warning?
No, we recorded that American Music. They got a studio
Okay.
next to it, and there was just a house. Got a lot of bands recorded there.
So, you know,
There wasn't a guy, and
For
I
us,
think Terry Dates started. He was an engineer.
and Chris
Jack and
Music
Dino.
and
Jack and
Dino.
Dino.
That was really like 85 on.
Yeah.
And then you had all the 45 that you were on. It was 79 to 84.
Kurt Block.
Was it Kurt? Yeah. So was
There was, yes.
Yeah,
There were two
There's
producers.
a kind of a singular guitar tone
Right.
throughout, you know, from DI, Agent Orange.
Rick Agnew.
Yeah.
But to answer, the producers were Tom Wilson and Chaz Ramirez.
For sure, yeah. The Casbah Studio in Fullerton, which is another place that put out a ton of great music. And Chaz was the guy behind the boards for that, for a lot of DI. A lot of that sound you're talking about, they really like honed in on it and sort of like, in a way, just really like dug in and kind of used it a lot, so much so that other bands in other places started using it. You know, they call that style like what, the Agnew?
Yeah, that octave.
You know, that Agnew octave, you know, and that's, so he was one, you know, Tom Wilson, which
He had a yacht rock background.
he recorded like Seals and Crofts before the Adolescents, you know, and so to think about him in a studio with a bunch of like 16-year-olds who are like drunk off their asses and like trying to record the Blue album, the Adolescents, literally, like that just, and you know, they're like literally like firing, you know, fire extinguishers in each other's faces in the middle in between songs, like the singer doesn't even want to be there, he wants to go see another band play, you know, these guys just are, you know, a total mess.
And Tom went on to produce Offspring also. And
Yeah.
the Vandals, right?
And the Vandals, and you know, just so just like with we talk about Jerry Roach and we talk about Linda, you know, on as far as the venue side, we just definitely talk about people who are in the studio being the adults in the room to kind of say, hey, try it again, or hey, like that was, we could do better, you know, whatever. And a lot of the bands didn't appreciate it the way that they do now. And when we talked to Tony Cadena from Adolescents, and he's like, yeah, I was pissed off at Tom Wilson for like making me be good at my you know, vocals and making me try another take. You know, I just wanted to go and party.
And then the other thing, I was working at record stores through the 80s up until I started my own, but there seemed to be a decent distribution system, distributor, because we were getting those Agent Orange records. We were
Like the
getting
Posh Boy and Frontier
Posh
stuff?
Boy, that was it, yeah. Mystic. Yeah.
Mystic, Posh Boy, and Frontier. You know, again, those are from the standpoint of the labels. Lisa
Who was
Fancher,
Posh Boy?
Robbie Fields, who not a lot of people have like great things to say about him.
That's Mommy's Little Monster right there.
But essentially, yeah, without him, I mean, it's he's a liar, cheap asshole, but we needed him because he's the one.
He
No one
put
else.
out the Beach Boulevard compilation.
He put out the Beach Boulevard
Yeah.
compilation, which was essentially like the first kind of compilation dedicated to like the SoCal punk sound. Not all the bands on there are from Orange County, but he's the one who basically enticed the bands that were from Orange County to be on that, like the Crowd and Middle Class.
We needed Deep Six too.
Yeah, so these aren't, you know, when I say the adult in the room, like these aren't perfect characters by any stretch.
They're
You
wine
know,
of beer.
yeah,
They're
it's-
just adults.
They
have to be.
They're just adults. But at the same time, necessary in the right place at the right time. You know, to be able to facilitate what the youth were trying to do, and so that's why I think ultimately part of the reason why this sound and the music and like, you know, youth culture continues to proliferate is because those kids grow up and hopefully, you know, own a record store, you know, hopefully have a studio, or are able to facilitate in some way the kids that they see coming up who have something to say or have an interest to be like, hey, come back, come check it out, like, let me teach you what I know, and that's what happened here. So.
And the Vandals were the first non-Bad Religion band signed to Epitaph, which probably helped their cause in the punk circles as well, getting that record out there.
Was Easter Vandalism on Epitaph? Or that was-
I think, yeah. And the EP and yeah, the first one were on, because they were friends with Brett. And he
Well,
was,
there was also a huge skate culture here too, on top of, you know, a lot of isolation, you know, not only just being in the upper left, you're feeling that anyways, but the boroughs around here, it's not like San Francisco where it's 3 miles and there
Right.
it is. You got 20 miles, you know, West Seattle, you know, we didn't have a bridge until 1985. But Laurelhurst or Lake Forest Park and all these places, Shoreline, Linwood, these are in the boonies.
We called those fenders. Edmonds,
But
Glenwood, North Enders, Thunders.
That's suburban, Renton, Kent, man, it's all still here, and those folks still all feel that. And that idea of suburbia we certainly understand, and that isolation and that skate punk culture too. The Ab Rats, of course, and the West Seattle hardcore crew and all that. I mean, the Accused comes out of, my very first employee was Tommy Niemeyer from the
Okay.
and he was all Agent Orange and DI, Descendants too. That was where he's getting that tinty, jigga jigga.
And it's just funny about DI is just the whole thing is that Casey Royer, the singer of DI, was the drummer of the Adolescents.
Oh.
He didn't like that his contributions weren't being appreciated, so that's why he left DI. Or left Adolescents.
And like Steve Soda with being in Agent Orange, he left Agent Orange to start Adolescents because, like Tom, didn't want to use his songs. So he's like, "Fuck you! I'm going to start a new thing." And he basically just stole the guys to the Detours, which were the Agnew brothers, and just started Adolescents. And so when you look at the track listing of like these early Detour songs, they're Adolescent songs. To get to the point where we were blowing minds earlier
Yes.
about
Two songs sounding the same.
Yeah.
If anybody here, me and Lance know about it. I don't know if anybody else does, but there was a Social Distortion in St. Paul. It was 1945, and I think Mommy's Little Monster was on the other side, on the east side. So 1945, and then there's a song by Adolescents called Amoeba, probably the biggest, most well-known song. 1945 was a big song too. They're both the same fucking song, but different lyrics. I didn't know that until I read this book. They're all in the same band. They both like the song. They're like, "Fuck, I'm recording it." No, we're recording it. So
Well, they wrote it together.
They wrote it totally, but they both took ownership of it. And it's 1945. If you're asking Mike Ness,
Sure
and
is.
it's Amoeba. If you're asking what I
Because
love.
the way they agreed to disagree on everything was, I think Mike wrote one of the guitar parts, like, "Fine, you get to keep that." And like, "Well, we wrote everything else." It's like, "Fine, and we're keeping that." And that's how you have two of the same songs.
How did they initially become friends? Or was it high school or something?
Rick, Casey, and Mike were the first members of Social Distortion. With their singer at the time was a basketball player who went to he went to like some junior college. Was it Fullerton College he went to?
Somewhere. It doesn't matter.
It was both Social Distortion
Yes.
before Mike Ness.
No, it was Mike's, Casey, Rick.
Mike wasn't singing.
Oh.
Yeah, he wasn't the singer.
Tom, this guy Tom, I forget.
Tom Corbin.
Yeah, who ended up becoming a newscaster, by the way.
Everyone does.
Our book is full of fun facts like this, guys. So if you want to know,
It's all in there.
but essentially, and I don't know how we're doing on time, but there's so much that goes into it aside from just the actual notes that were played and the tours and the shows. We're talking about the geography and the proximity. How you know your friends is how Mike Ness found his friends and played in bands with them, and all of these things. It's just like a domino effect. And so we take it from this small vantage point of this place on the map that just so happens to have some of the biggest acts to ever exist in rock and roll, which nobody took seriously for the entire time it was going until they did. And the world bought these records. And so,
Just like here.
Just like here. Hey, if there's one city that gets it, it's you guys. So that's where, again, like to the point we're trying to make is that the similarities in this scene, in this culture, are mirrored throughout the world. I think everyone can see themselves a little bit in these characters, which we kind of stopped thinking of them as rock stars early on. We were like, these are characters in a book that we have to write a compelling story about based on what really happened, but to show who they were like 360, not just like the hero jumping on, off the stage, It's like the guy who was getting his ass kicked in New York for like fucking with the wrong people and was like running away on the
And
another
the guy
side
who
of
had to
lines
get
where-
a Pulp Fiction-esque injection into his heart so he didn't die.
like these were flawed people who were like really embarrassing sometimes. And so, but beyond that, it was like that. It's those flaws that make them great. That's why we care about any hero in any story, is because they're not perfect. And I think it just so happens that, you know, they use those insecurities, those imperfections to really spill it out into the music, and you hear it, and then it connects with other people, and then that's how we wind up getting, you know, where we get to today. So, you know.
My last question is, how is it that how do you write a book as a duo? Is one, is Nate writing one chapter, Dan, you're writing?
Weekly boxing matches and
coin flips. No, we started off doing it. When you write a book, you have to send in what's called a sample chapter. So we started with our sample chapter and started writing a little together. Then the way we were very disciplined, which I'm still to this day very impressed that we actually stuck to it. Where we'd write a certain number of words per day, and we'd say, at like, I don't know, 3 o'clock, well, I'm gonna write about this. He's like, well, I'm gonna write about this. And then we kind of went down that path. It's like, well, I'm finished now. I think since we started talking about this, I'm gonna weave it into that. And it kind of, you know, came together to about 3 weeks before the thing was due. We were kind of like, oh, we put it all together. And we were lucky that there were no arguments. It happened to work very easily within an hour. So then it snapped together.
how does any band write a song? You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of how I look at this, because I've been in bands my whole life, and it was not easy to write a good song at any point. Sometimes it was, but it was like, it was just so fast that it's like, okay, it's easy. But that's like 1% of the time maybe, and then the rest of the time you're like going through it, trying to figure out what's good about it, what sucks about it, all of that. But we went on this journey together. We interviewed like 90% of the people sitting in front of them together, or on a Zoom call or a phone call or whatever the situation was. So at the end of those calls, we would have another call. We would call each other right after and be like, oh, so that was pretty great, right? Or that was terrible.
Or
right?
this is usable and this is.
You know, like, so we would just go through it so that when it came time to do the writing part, like he's talking about, it was like, okay, we have an outline roughly, we know what was going on when we were doing these interviews, what was important about it, and then, okay, let's hammer out, you know, the best stuff that we can get out of each one of these sections. And then, so that came together, and then once the rough draft was done, then we went back through it, because really, good writing is just good rewriting. That's all you can do, is that you just gotta keep, it's like reps, you just gotta keep going through it until it's good, hopefully. And really, when I say good, I mean, you can't tell who's writing what.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, it's not like he wrote a chapter and I wrote a chapter. We kind of started that way so that it wasn't so daunting, but we each blended each other's stuff into each other's chapters, so that, because I like stuff, I pointed out stuff that he wouldn't necessarily do, and he did the same for me.
It's like putting a puzzle together.
Yeah, it was just like I said, just writing a song as a band, essentially. You know, the chapters for that, and hopefully the song sounds good. You know.
And you were both doing it in addition to your day jobs too.
Yeah, like my little day job, and you know, just all these things. I mean, it's really crazy actually, because I went through a lot of stuff in the middle of this book. Like, my dad died, and I had to finish it. I had to basically be like, you know, find something within me to be like, I'm gonna do this. You know, anyone who's ever had like a relative, I'm not trying to serious this out here, but anyone that's ever had like a relative pass away, you just know that it's not just that, it's all of the other stuff, especially when it's someone that really means a lot to like a lot of people, and you're the person that people are gonna ask questions to, and you gotta do direct traffic and come up with a funeral, or you gotta do all this stuff and sell a house and do whatever. Like, this was my escape from all of that. You know, this was like me putting on my headphones and listening to the Blue album and being like, fuck everything else. This, you know, for half an hour before I can dive into a news meeting and talk about what Britney Spears is doing, you know, or Taylor Swift or whatever. Because like, I was also the deputy editor for entertainment focus on music mostly, but it's like, you know, that book was like my safe space. So just like punk rock was my safe space.
Yeah, to that point, I was running Spin at the time, and as Corbin over here can attest, there was a lot of headaches involved with that. So being able to take 80 to 90 minutes a day to actually do something I like without annoyance and without me being with Nate being, we're just together knowing we are 50% of this, and there's not like 18 other people yelling at us to do something. It is just like a refuge. On top of, you know, other things too, like taking my kid to school and picking him up, doing things like little things.
So what was the moment you knew the piece was finished?
When it was in bookstores.
I didn't believe it at all, like until I saw it. Actually, this version, like that Duff has, like it was because we wrote it, you know, after recording it for 9 months roughly, and then writing for 6. But that 6 months, like I was telling you, had a lot of. I mean, both of us had a lot of stuff going on. So it was like keeping it together, writing every day, being really like militaristic about we have to come up with this amount of words per week so we can get this done with enough time to fuck up if things happen. So getting that part done, it almost felt like you're purging. You're not writing, you're like purging stuff. And then there was a point where we were like, okay, we got to Tetris this all together. And then it started to feel like a book, more so, like with organized chapters and everything. And then it went through edits and everything like that. And I still didn't get it. I was still like, man, this is really coming out? I don't know. Like, something could happen. The publisher, you know, we had, you know, in the book business, it's like not the most stable place, you know, and our publisher things were going on where they were like, you know, oh, you're going to be on this aspect of the label now. And like, okay, and then they're going to be, oh, you're going to be on this part. Like, is the book coming out or not?
Right.
You know, like, so tell us what's going on. I mean, we already signed the deal, we did everything, we wrote the book, but now it's like the business part of it, it's like kind of unknown to either of us. Like, we're just journalists in music, like, we're not, you know, published authors yet, so we don't know, we have to learn this stuff in real time. And so when it finally did come out in that form, and I got to hold it, I was like, oh, like, okay.
No,
You know?
seeing it
and
in
then,
that
like,
form.
and then people like Duff are reading it. You know what I mean? Like,
his quote on the back. We were so like, you know,
What?
overwhelmed and so like grateful that you didn't pick it.
My
And-
blurb?
Yeah, it was
Like,
great.
it's easy, dude. That's the thing.
We were just like, wow.
You guys wrote a great book. They wrote a great book. You can't tell, to Matt's question, you can't tell the two different guys. The style doesn't change throughout the book. It's one concise piece of information that's told with a lot of fun, some humor, some darkness, all the great things that a good book should have in it. And you guys did a great job. And congratulations on this book coming out. I do know what that's like. When do you know when you're done? Fuck knows. I guess it's now. So
it is truly now.
And I know both of you guys went through a bunch of shit here in the last year. I know this personally. So congratulations, fellas.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Duff.
Thanks for coming.
Nate Jackson, Chandler,
Nate Jackson, Daniel Kohn, let's hear it one more time. Congratulations. Why don't you guys just get comfortable? I can bring you drinks, coffee, whatever you might want, water. And if anyone wants to get a book signed, you guys just